This is draft season presented by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Giants. Decode risk, unlock opportunity. Learn more at Moody's.com. All right, joined by Tony Pauline as always from Sportskeeda.com. I am John Schmeelk. And folks, if you're just joining us, maybe you're new to draft season, we're really getting into the meat of quote unquote draft season now. Even though this is a Giants podcast per se, this is not a Giants topical podcast. We do all draft. We might do some couple Giant things here or there based on who they might draft, but this is an overall draft podcast. So if you're not a Giants fan, stick with us. We'll carry you through the next 3 months or so as we get closer to the draft at the end of April. And of course, then we'll be back. We do shows from August to January every year. Tony and I just got back a few days ago from Frisco, Texas, and Mobile for the Shrine Bowl and Senior Bowl. And Tony, I mean, we got the best weather we've ever had in Mobile. I don't know if you've ever seen better than that, but it was 70 and sunny. That was as good as it gets, my friend.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I think it was like 80 degrees 2 or 3 days in a row, which was very nice because I came home with a tan. But the fact is this: it didn't rain, which was great. Last day was a little bit overcast, which is fine
Yep.
because you don't want to get on a plane for a 4 hour trip home all sweaty and stuff. But it was three. It was actually 6 very busy days. At the Senior Bowl, I know I had a couple of people come up to me, talk about they watched the podcast religiously. They told us how much they enjoy it. Thank you for that. It was great seeing those people. And it's long days. It's one practice after another. So you've got anywhere from 3.5 hours to 4 hours of practice. You're trying to watch 100 different guys and get as much out of it as you can. And then there's the writing and the mingling with people and trying to get notes. But it's always fun, But you look forward to it when you start off, and by the end of the week, you want to get home, so it's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I started early every day. I was on Radio Row from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. every day. If you guys want to hear or see those player interviews, by the way, and again, it's not really Giant specific stuff on there. So go to the Giants Huddle podcast. I have literally 5 different episodes, 2 from Shrine, 3 from Senior Bowl. I probably did over 100 player interviews. If you want to get to know these guys a little bit, go check those out. You can find that on the Giants app, giants.com/podcast, or just search for Giants Huddle. And then Tony, of course, works the bars at night. I mean, no one is out more in Mobile and Shrine than Tony, talking to people, getting the inside scoop. So before we get to the game itself, Tony, what's maybe one thing you learned about the draft class or the draft from people while you were in Frisco and Mobile that you maybe weren't so sure about when you got down there?
Well, it's what I learned when I was in Frisco is it's almost down to a person that Cam Ward's going to be the first quarterback selected. They think right now, if the draft was held today, the Titans would take Cam Ward with that first pick. We'll have to see what goes on through the rest of the process. Obviously, they're not enthused about the early part of the first round, but they love the quantity in this draft in the sense that they invite 325 players to the combine. There's actually probably closer to 400 players that deserve an invitation to the combine. And 255 players will be drafted. And there's probably in excess of 350 players that have draftable grades and should be drafted. And that's because of the fact that we're at the end here of that extra COVID year that the NCAA gave to all athletes in 2020. That's sort of running out. So what you're going to have now is you're going to have a very deep day 3 of the draft.
All right, Tony, before we go position by position, and that's how we're going to break this down. We're focusing on Senior Bowl today. If you guys want to go check out what our response and take was to the Shrine Bowl practice we were at last Saturday and Sunday, you can go check out our previous draft season episode. The audio version has our reaction to those 2 practices. So, Tony, before we go position by position, give me a handful of your fastest risers, guys that you think did the best that helped their stock from this week.
I'd say Jalen Noel, the receiver from Iowa State, who we'll get into. Gray Zabel, the offensive lineman from North Dakota State. Oluwafemi Oladeju, the edge rusher from UCLA. David Walker, the edge rusher from Central Arkansas. And Azaria Thomas, the cornerback from Florida State. We'll get into all those guys, but I think those are the players whose draft stock really improved after 3 days of Senior Bowl practice.
I'm with you on all of those. All right, but let's start with the quarterback position, Tony. You got 4 guys you wanted to highlight here from these two teams. There were 7 quarterbacks in total in Mobile.
Some good, some bad. We'll start off with really the bad, and that was Jalen Milroe. I mean, he looked out of sorts. He was holding the ball too long. He was staring primary targets down, which he does on film. He was inaccurate with his passes. I'm a Jalen Milroe guy. You go back to one of our first podcasts in August. I was on the Jalen Milroe bandwagon. It hasn't happened. It didn't happen during the season. It didn't happen during the Senior Bowl. I still think he's going to be a first-round pick because of those incredible physical skills. There's no doubt about it. He absolutely did not help his draft stock.
And Tony, I want to add on that real quick before you jump to the next guy. We know he has a big arm, right, but he didn't like. If you never watched Jalen Milroe before, and you just watched Senior Bowl practices in the Senior Bowl game, you would have no idea that Jalen Milroe has a big arm. Like, he didn't even show that off over the course of 3 days.
Always going to the check down receiver because that's the safe, that's a safe throw. It's safer to throw the ball 10 to 15 yards than to hurl it down 45 yards down the field and try and hit a receiver in stride or accurately hit a receiver, which he struggled doing on film. Overall, and you're right, a lot of quarterbacks do that. It was disappointing that Milroe went that route rather than show off his big time arm.
All right, take us through the rest of the QBs you want to talk about.
Yeah, Jackson Dart, very efficient, accurate in the short to intermediate range passing, didn't show a big arm, and that's what I wanted to see from Jackson Dart. I wanted to see if he could drive the ball downfield. He got passes downfield, but they would kind of flutter, they would float, the receivers would be slowing up, waiting for the ball to get to them. So as far as I'm concerned, Jackson Dart did not answer that question. I think on the scoreboard one day, they said he had the longest throw of any quarterback, which was 56 yards, but there's no speed to the passes, which is an issue. Could be a very good Brock Purdy type of timing passer. There were people talking about him as a mid-first round choice. I never had him as a first round prospect. I don't think he showed first round ability during Senior Bowl practices.
I agree. Dylan Gabriel, another guy, Tony, I know you want to touch on. And look, he's just not a big guy. 5'10 and a half, small frame. You stand next to him. He's small. Like, he's smaller than Bryce Young was, right? He's just not a big kid. But I thought he was on time and accurate. Like, for what his tools are, I thought he showed, look, he knows how to play the quarterback position. He's going to be a backup in the league for a long time.
Great accuracy, great timing. And remember, these are receivers that he basically just met off the bus. These aren't guys that he's been practicing with. But really, from the get-go, he knew where his receivers are. He had the ball to them as they were leaving routes. Doesn't have a big arm, doesn't have a big body, but he's got it going on between the ears. And again, an excellent timing passer in the short to intermediate field. As far as I'm concerned, Dylan Gabriel was the best quarterback at the Senior Bowl.
And how about our Canadian friend, Taylor Elgersma?
Had his moments, big time arm. He's a tall, thin kid. He's got to add a little bit of bulk. You can see the arm strength is there. He basically did what Jackson Dart wasn't able to do, drive the deep passes with speed, excellent velocity on the outs. Not overly accurate. There's some things he's going to have to work on, but I think he absolutely did enough to get day 3 consideration.
I'm with you. I'm going to throw Tyler Shook out there as well. And the best thing about the Senior Bowl, Tony, I'm learning all these pronunciations now. So I'm figuring out all these names. And we've been butchering Tyler. We've been saying show or shall, and nope, Tyler Shook. So that, or Shuck. So, I think for a guy that's an interesting player, used to be a 5-star recruit, right? Big kid, showed off the arm, has all the physical attributes a team might want. I think the meetings teams have with him, see how smart he is, see how he figures out defenses, see, all the transfers, the injuries too for him over the course of his career. If you could sort all that out, he's got the tools to be a good quarterback. Now, we saw some mistakes. We saw some inaccuracies. He threw a pick in the game on Saturday as well, throwing it behind the receiver. So I think there's some stuff to work out there, but at least tools-wise, I can make the argument Tyler Shook might have been the guy with the best tools as a thrower that was at that game.
Because Jalen Milroe didn't show his tools as a thrower. But yeah, I agree that the inconsistency has been a big problem for Shook. You come into the season, maybe he's a late 7th round pick, but he showed enough during the season and during the Senior Bowl. But now you're thinking second half of day 3, no doubt about it. Good quarterback coach. Now he doesn't have a big time frame in the sense that he's a 7th-year senior, and he doesn't have. What that means is he doesn't have great upside. You're getting what you see with Tyler Shook versus, say, Jalen Milroe. But still, I think if you can You can iron out some of the fundamentals and improve the accuracy. He's a big, impressive looking guy, and you watch him on film. He's not an immobile pocket passer, but he's done a great job literally from the beginning of the season, leading Louisville, and had at least 3 solid days of practice at the Senior Bowl where he was able to show some really good traits.
Yeah, team's going to see 6'5", 220 and a big arm, and they'll be like, I can figure that out. Let's go. I can figure it out. All right, let's jump to the running back position, Tony. You had 4 guys you wanted to touch on. Then I had 4 others I wanted to touch on. It was a stacked running back grouut.
Yeah, absolutely. LaQuint Allen, not an outside runner, but a strong interior ball carrier and a tremendous pass catcher. I mean, you see it on film. I saw it at the Senior Bowl. Really a good, big-bodied running back pass catcher is what he showed for 3 days. Rashard Smith, again, another terrific pass catcher. I mean, we're going to talk about this, but in the one-on-one drills, all the linebackers except for one were left twisting in the wind by the tight ends and the running backs.
They had no shot. They had no shot.
In the coverage drills. I mean, these guys were terrific, and they were also good catching the ball in scrimmage. Marcus Yarns, who we spoke about a couple times in the lead up to the Shrine and the Senior Bowl, very creative, very, is able multi-cut ball carrier. Again, another real good pass catcher out of the backfield. I think he's going to be a real good late day 3 pick as a third down back. And Baishul Tootin, I mean, this guy is just explosive. He is fast. He's able to cut back against the grain without losing momentum. He has a burst through the hole. And the thing I found out about Tootin was he was dealing with a significant ankle injury all throughout the season. He played on it. And despite everything that he showed last week, which was really good, he's still only about 90%. So watch Tootin, and we'll speak about this as we get closer to the combine. Tootin is a back. He goes about 209 pounds. He's probably going to run in the low 4.3s, and he showed that speed on the field.
Yeah, he was a guy, Tony, that I was not familiar with heading down to Mobile. And multiple times during practice, I'll see a run. I'm like, who's that guy? And I look at it, and it was Tootin like 3 or 4 different times. So he's definitely a guy to me that kind of showed out. All right, I'm going to throw out a couple other guys for you. Ollie Gordon was voted Practice Player of the Week for one of the teams at running back position. The suddenness, none of that stuff gets. He's just a really big dude. I mean, Ollie Gordon for this game weighed in at 233 pounds at 6'1". He's a big bruising between the tackles back. I'm just not sure there's enough juice there, Tony.
Yeah.
RJ Harvey, on the other hand, he's all juice, right? He's quick, he's fast, he's explosive. He likes to bounce stuff outside a little bit. Not the biggest guy, but he has some juice. And then Devin Neal is boring but good. Like, you watch him, no trait really jumps out at you, but he gets where he needs to go. I think he reads the defense well. He's got pretty good feet in the hole when he runs the football. Weighed in at 5'11", 220, good measurements for a running back. So those are guys that jumped out to me. And then Donovan Edwards, just wanted to bring him up. He's a guy we've talked about a lot on the show over the past 2 years. Again, the juice he had in 2023, I don't know what happened to it. But again, in practice, you just don't see that juice with him having any sort of burst or long speed.
Caught the ball relatively well in practice, but, seems to have lost confidence. I mean, really should have been that number 1 back at Michigan, but he wasn't. He basically was second fiddle to Kalel Mullins, who was at the Senior Bowl, who did reasonably well. And, Donovan Edwards' draft stock has taken a big hit, not only because of the Senior Bowl, but because of his senior season. Want to go back to Ollie Gordon. Here's the problem with Ollie Gordon is you mentioned he's 6'1". He's a tall running back who runs tall. If you ever watch him, he doesn't run with good lean. He doesn't run behind his pads. He runs tall. And when you're that big of a downhill ball carrier, between the tackles type of runner, and you're running tall, that's not a good thing. That leads to a lot of crushing hits, potentially the ball being knocked out of your hands. So I think Ollie Gordon, I think it was kind of a surprise that he entered the draft after the season he had, but maybe he's just done with college football. I think Ollie Gordon was a guy who just a couple of years ago, we're talking about maybe as a top 60 pick. I think he's going to fall deep into day 3.
Yeah, and just note on Mullins, the Michigan running back, the second one, he had an injury, so he did not practice over the course of the week. Just a note on him. All right, let's go to the wide receivers, Tony. You mentioned Jalen Noel, another guy I figured out. It's actually Jalen Noel. It's not Noel. Now, in typical Iowa fashion, I interviewed him, introduced him as Jalen Noel. He did not correct me, so he does not care. I feel bad now because you look at him, it looks like a Noel, but apparently it's Jalen Noel. You want to lead off with him in terms of what wide receivers you thought did pretty well.
Smaller guy, very quick, has a burst, was basically uncoverable, and caught everything that was thrown at him. I
Fast,
mean,
man. He is fast.
he is one of those guys who really delivered more than I expected. I mean, I thought I actually had his teammate, the bigger guy, Higgins, rated a little bit higher, but Noel really showed a lot of ability, as did Tez Johnson of Oregon, a guy who's even smaller. I mean, what did he come in at? He wasn't even 160 pounds, if I remember
Tez
correctly.
Johnson, I'll give you the measurements 5'09", so that's 5'9" and 1/4 inch, 156
Right.
pounds.
But he is explosive. I mean, and he's a real good pass catcher and a great story. I believe that you interviewed him for a while, and it's a great story. You should listen to that interview because he's a very likable guy. The thing is, the lack of size and this lack of growth potential is an issue, but he's just so fast and so explosive. Somebody's going to draft him and find a place for him, whether it be in the slot, whether it be you line him up backed off the line of scrimmage to keep him away from press coverage. Obviously, the lack of height, the high passes. But man, you get the ball in his hands and watch out because he can create.
No question about it. And then you two other wide receivers, Jack Besh, who had the game-winning score in the game. Of course, for those that know the story, his brother was killed in the terrorist attack in New Orleans, and he kind of played this game and dedicated his performance to his brother. And then Ty Felton, Tony, and I agree with you. Those two receivers, I believe, were on the American team, correct? I thought they were easily the two best receivers on that team. Besh is a guy, I don't think he's separated great, but he catches everything. Great body control, great hands. Big, strong kid, too. I mean, he weighed in at 214 pounds at 6'1", so he's got some bulk to him. He's going to block. And then I thought Ty Felton just, frankly, they had trouble covering him. Short, intermediate, deep. I thought he was open for much of that week. I thought those two guys did pretty well.
Felton, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated receivers in this draft. He's going to run in the low 4.4s, potentially 4.3s at the combine. He's 6'1". He had a monster campaign senior season at Maryland. Really took it off. Really took off, and he's a good vertical receiver. Never mind being able to catch all the underneath routes. I think he's going to go day 2. As far as Besh is concerned, if you watch that touchdown reception to win the game, that was what he did all week. I mean, he would grind it out. He would out-muscle defenders. Like you said, he's not quick. He's not fast. Doesn't separate well, but just competes and fights to come away with the ball, as you saw at the end of the game when he made that reception to win the game.
A couple other wide receivers I want to mention, Tony. I thought Kyle Williams out of Washington State. He had the fastest GPS at least one of the days for the wide receivers. Fast, quick. I thought he did a good job getting open. I thought he was impressive. You mentioned Jaden Higgins. I want to see how he runs at the combine. I think that's going to be a really big number for him. He weighed in at this game at 6'3" and 3/4, 217. So if he can somehow break 4.5 and get in the high 4.4s, that would be huge for him. We'll see how he runs. And then Arian Smith out of Georgia, a bit of a one-trick pony. He's got speed, and he showed it off. He was running by people deep, I thought, for a lot of those 3 days. I'm not sure, how varied his route tree is going to be, but he definitely showed off his ability to get deep.
He's got to learn to hold on the ball because he had a lot of drops during the season when Carson Beck was throwing the ball last year at Georgia. Go back to Higgins. He is estimated to run coming into the season. He was estimated as a 4.51 guy. So it's not all that unreasonable to think that come combine time he can run in the mid to high 4.4s, and with that body, that big frame body, and the way he catches the ball, that will be another check mark on his draft stock.
What tight ends jumped out to you, Tone?
Well, I mean, Elijah Arroyo. Elijah Arroyo literally looks like a big receiver playing the tight end position. I mean, he got down the field. He made some spectacular catches. He made the ordinary catches regularly. He catches the ball with solid fundamentals. Doesn't body catch, extends his hands, looks to pass in. He's a good-looking athlete. Really, no linebacker could stay with him. The safety struggled with staying with him. They were always playing catch-up, and he was always making a lot of receptions down the field. And that's what he does on film. Not much of a blocker, but they never really asked him to block, really didn't stand out in those blocking drills. But I thought he really helped himself, as did Thomas Fidone of Nebraska. Fidone entered the draft because Coach Matt Rule said, listen, you're a great player, but you just don't fit our offense. Either transfer or enter the draft. He decided to enter the draft. He is a big-bodied, athletic guy who catches the ball exceptionally well, showed some ability as a blocker. I think he's going to be underdrafted. I don't know if he gets in the third round, probably more of a fourth round guy. But really, when you put him into a system that's tailored for his talents, I think Fedoni's going to be a real good player, as he showed at the Senior Bowl.
All right, two tight ends I want to bring up real quick, Tony. I thought Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon, 6'5", 245. I thought he had a nice week. Good athlete, big, got open, caught the ball extremely well, had a nice one-handed catch at one of these competition drills at the end of one of the practices. And then I want to ask you about Mason Taylor, all right? The Jason Taylor son at LSU. Good, solid, all-around player. I watched him before I got there. I was like, all right, he's a good player, late day two type of guy for me. I don't know if it's the pedigree. And again, I talked to Mason Taylor, sweet kid, smart. I think he's going to be a good all-around tight end. People coming out of day one like he's a huge winner. He was dominant. Did I miss something?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, he was fractional compared to Arroyo, especially with Arroyo's speed and ability to get down the field. He caught the ball well, like you said, plays with good body control. But there's nothing that really stands out. There's nothing that wows you, or at least didn't wow me about Mason Taylor. I mean, he's very good, and he's going to be very good starting tight end. But
Agreed.
when you compare him with some of the guys like a Royer, you like to use that word juice. I didn't see a lot of juice in his game with the ability to get downfield. As far as Terrence Ferguson's concerned, real good in all aspects, but not great in any single aspect. So I think what that means is he's going to be a solid day three pick and will be a very good number two tight end that is a three down player at the position. Third and short, you can put him on the line as an inline blocker, or you can send him out on a 4 or 5 yard route for the for to catch the ball, and he'll do a good job for you.
Yeah, agreed. All right, let's go to the offensive line, Tony. And given the strength of the defensive lines in this group, I thought the offensive line more than held their own over the course of 3 days of practice. I think a lot of these guys helped themselves.
This was probably my favorite group. And it's my favorite group because when I go to the Senior Bowl, I come in with these expectations. And if the guys deliver more, like I said with Jalen Noel, that is what is impressed. That's what impresses me. And it was these groups that did it. And it was the smaller school guys that did it, not just the small school 1AA FCS guys, but the smaller 1A guys. Gray Zabel was fantastic. We talked about him early on when North Dakota State played a tough game played a tight game, which they eventually lost to Colorado. I believe it was week 1 of the college season. And Zabel really stood out. He was phenomenal. And he played multiple positions. He played guard, played center, and he did a terrific job. And these guys were playing against Deion Walker. They were playing against Walter Nolan. They weren't playing against inferior talent. And Zabel, I thought, was phenomenal, as was Jackson Slater, the big, stocky, broad guy from Sacramento State. He's tough, not as much of a zone blocker compared to Gray Zabel, but a terrific small area power blocker who held his own at both guard and center.
And by the way, Tony, they don't make 320-pound centers anymore. If he could play center at 320, that's really good size.
Yeah. Jacob Bayer of Arkansas State, of Louisiana, he held his own all week, and again against Deion Walker. Here's a guy who's probably given up 40 pounds, 50 pounds to Deion Walker, and he's controlling the point of attack, solid fundamentals. A day 3 pick, Clay Webb out of Jacksonville State, I thought played exceptionally well. Day in and day out, he was winning every snap in those one-on-ones and then looked good in the scrimmages. There's some off-the-field character things that concern a couple of teams about Clay Webb, but still, I mean, you go to the Senior Bowl, you're like, okay, maybe this guy's a very late pick late in the draft, and he has a performance like that. It just does nothing but help the draft stock.
Yeah, remember, by the way, Clay Webb is also a 5-star Georgia transfer, so he definitely has the pedigree as a guy, even though he is a Jacksonville State guy.
I thought Anthony Belton of North Carolina State did a terrific job at left tackle. Here's a guy who 2 years ago, scouts thought he's a potential first-round pick, did not play that well in 2023, made the right decision, came back, played in 2024 for the Wolfpack, had a real good year. He's a phenomenal athlete. He's 345 pounds. He's going to run in the 4.9s at the combine. He's going to test exceptionally well. Consistency and basically confidence has been a problem for Belton, but I think he got that all figured out. Two college tackles from the Big 12 who I thought did very well at guard. Caleb Rogers from Texas Tech played guard and center. Problem with him is he's got short arms, so he's definitely an interior guy. I think his arms were like 31 and a half. And then Wyatt Millum, I thought played very well at guard throughout the week. I heard from some people that said they thought he was exceptional during the game. And, a lot of people talk about Wyatt Millum as a first-round tackle. I never bought into that. He's definitely affirmed himself as a second-round guard.
I like that. And you have Emory Jones on your list too. You want to touch on him, Tony? I was impressed by his teammate Miles Frazier. I thought Miles Frazier had a really good week of practice.
I was not impressed with Emory Jones. That's why he's on the list. And the thing is, Emory Jones really has been on a downslide, since the beginning of the season, a la Jalen Milroe. Emory Jones, coming into the season, was graded just slightly below his teammate Will Campbell by scouts who grade underclassmen, and it's been all downhill. You can see the ability there. You can see the strength and the power, but there's a lot of inconsistency. There's a lot of poor fundamentals on too many snaps. Doesn't set with a wide base, bends at the waist. And I think it's really going to go. We're at the situation where Emory Jones, who everyone thought would be a first-round pick entering the season, you're looking at barely a third-round selection right now.
Yeah, he had a couple of good one-on-ones with Barron Sorrell at the end of one of the practices in competition. I mentioned Frazier as a teammate at guard. I thought he did a pretty good job, Tony. Miles Frazier. Your guy, Josh Connerly, I know the only thing people are going to remember about him is the bad rep he had against the Marshall pass rusher, Mike Green.
Michael Green, right.
That got blasted on Twitter, but I thought he was pretty good. Played mostly left tackle, had a couple snaps on the right side, which he really hadn't done before. Marcus Bowe, I think you saw his athleticism and his traits, but you also saw what he has to work on. He did mostly right tackle. He did a little bit of right guard at the end of the week. I think he took 1 or 2 snaps at left tackle where he really hasn't played a ton. So I think Bowe is a guy that will go on day 2 that people will pick as a developmental tackle. His measurements ended up being really good. I'll give him for the folks 6'04", 310, 33-inch arms. That's why some people might see him, even though he's a tackle for feet for a tackle, arms of a guard. So we'll see where he fits in there. And then one guy who I thought started off slow, Tony, is the Boston College offensive tackle, Ozzie Trapolo. I thought he ended up having a really good last couple of days at offensive tackle. Big kid, 6'7 and a half, 320, 33.5-inch arms. That was a guy that, going in, I didn't have any expectations for, but I thought he played really well the last 2 days of practice.
Absolutely. I would agree with you. Go back to Bowe. I spoke with some of the edge rushers who went up against him, and they said, we know he's light. We know how to exploit it. We're just going to basically bull rush him off the ball. Getting back to that play where Green demolished Connerly, and it's all over the internet, I spoke with a couple of scouts who were down there who said Connerly didn't look like he was ready. It was as much the fact that Connerly was not set on that play as it was a good play by Green, but it's out there and everybody's, fawning over Green and saying Connerly stinks. Not the same sort of opinion in the scouting community.
Yeah, Connerly tried to short set him to get on him quick, and before he even got his feet down, Green was on top of him. It was just a bad combination of factors. And look bad for Connerly, but again, it's one-on-one reps. It's 1 rep, and obviously the advantage goes to the defense in those reps. So,
I think what people are looking at is, the issue with Green is the size and the strength, and then all of a sudden he bull rushes. A Big Ten offensive tackle, former Pac-12 offensive tackle, back into the pocket, like, oh, well, he's strong enough. He proved it right there. That's not the case.
Yeah, and he's your guy, Tony. I think Connerly showed that he can play offensive tackle. He's going to get drafted as a tackle, and teams are going to try him there first. So,
what was his arm like? Do you have his arm like? I don't know.
I think it was 34 flat, I believe, which is more than long enough. Let me get that exact number for you. Yeah, it was 34 flat, 6'04", 313, 34-inch arms. Good enough.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of guys who measured taller and had Membo, who didn't play. Played 1 day, and I think he had food poisoning.
Yep,
he had
0 days. Yeah. Membo never got out there. He had food poisoning. Never practiced.
He had some impressive measurements, and that's one of the things that you want to look for is, when the season begins, the scouts come out with their grades, with their measurements, and you see how it matches up. Are these guys bigger than what they were or what they were reported to be over the summer? Are they shorter? And some of these guys, I think, really did well on the measurements.
Draft season is presented by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Giants, uniting the brightest minds to turn today's risks into tomorrow's opportunities. Learn more at Moodys.com. All right, Tony, let's jump over to the defensive side of the ball here. The defensive line, we knew it was a good group coming in, and they did not disappoint.
They didn't, but it wasn't the big name guys that we expected to really dominate who did. I thought it was the lesser name guys. I thought Josh Farmer of Florida State was really good. He's quick, he's explosive, he's got good size, he's got some strength. He was very up and down the past 2 years at Florida State, where, on one play, he would just dominate and then he would disappear. He was dominant during the Senior Bowl, and I think he really helped his draft stock. Terrific first step, plays with great head level, shows some power, shows some good
Yeah,
hand movement. I
power
thought
player.
Darius,
Yeah.
I thought Darius Alexander of Toledo had his moments. A quick three technique, one gap type of tackle who plays with great leverage and head level. I like Jamari Caldwell of Oregon. I know everyone's in love with Derek Harmon. I understand that, and Caldwell's going to go much later in the draft, but he is explosive. He moves relatively well for a big man. Like to see him use some more power in his game, uses his hands well, did very well, or most of the times did well in those one-on-ones, and was able to exploit the blocker he was up against.
No question. I'll throw a couple names out there for you, Tony. I thought Junior Tafuna out of Utah
Yes.
had some really good reps the last two
Yeah.
days. You
Yeah.
know, you watch him play, and he plays with such power where he just drives guys backwards, but he's just 6'3", 303. So he's not the biggest guy, but he plays, I think, with great strength. You mentioned Farmer. I agree with you. Darius Alexander, to me, like 6'3" and a half, 304, 34-inch arms. He checks so many boxes physically. He's that big, long, lean defensive tackle. I'm with you. I thought he played particularly well. And if you're looking for like a big guy that's going to be a plugger for you, Tim Smith out of Alabama. He's not the most athletic guy, but he's 6'4", 311. I thought he played with pretty good power. There are a couple of the guys you wanted to mention in this group.
Yeah, well, guys who I think disappointed. I mean, Walter Nolan was good in spots, but he also got handled by the Clay Webbs and the Gray Zables of the world. He was not as dominant as I expected him to be. I thought this would be a big platform for him to really move into the middle of round one. Didn't see it from him. And I thought it was just a terrible week for Deion Walker from Kentucky. I mean, his draft stock continues to slide down. Did not have a good campaign in 2024. He's overweight. I mean, we both saw it. He's wearing a cutoff, not even a cutoff shirt. He's not having his shirt tucked in, raises his arm. You see his stomach flapping around. And he was just getting handled by lesser opponents, by the Clay Webbs, by the Jacob Bayers, by the Jackson Slayers, or at least guys you think that he should have dominated, and he never did. Didn't even come out for the last day of practice.
All right, let's jump over to the. I want to mention Ty Robinson very quickly. He's a guy that I thought we might see a little bit more from too, Tony. I thought the last day he woke up a little bit and was getting some penetration, but he wasn't getting upfield as much as you saw on tape. He had one good tackle for loss in the game on Saturday, but I was expecting 11. I talked to him, great kid. I was expecting a little bit more out of Robinson.
Yeah, I spent some time with him, and I would agree with you. And I'm a Robinson guy, just like I'm a Jalen Miro guy. That last day sort of redeemed himself for me. But the first 2 days, you're absolutely right. I mean, he was basically non-existent.
All right, let's go to the edge players, Tony. And Olufemi Oladejo, I'm with you. He's the first guy on your list. I've rewatched some of the one-on-ones this morning. You line him up outside. You line him up inside.
Yeah.
Just his power, his punch, his burst. He just seemed to have every offensive lineman he went up against was on the defensive the whole time, and he made them uncomfortable. This is the first year in his career that he played the edge. He was an inside linebacker, and they moved him to the edge to make room for Schlesinger, who was their middle linebacker at UCLA this year. He came in 6'02 and 3/4, 261, 33.5-inch arms. That guy was the best edge rusher there, and that's understanding there's some potential first-round picks there. Ola Dejo was phenomenal.
I got to spend an extensive amount of time with him on Wednesday evening. He is an interesting guy. Talk about his play. Like you said, there was a couple of times on Thursday where they lined him up over center. Now, he was standing up. They lined him up over center, and he destroyed the center. He destroyed him on the outside. He destroyed him on the inside. He was the guy that told me that when he went up against Bo, he knew that Bo was a little light, and he knew how he could beat him, and he did. And he showed a variety of moves, primarily standing up over tackle. Just a super interesting guy. He's not – when I would say something that I didn't like about not necessarily him, something else, it wasn't even about football. He wanted to know why I didn't like it. He wanted me to go into detail. We actually went out to dinner, and we're leaving the restaurant because I was going to drive him back to the players' hotel, and he stopped and spoke with every scout that he interviewed with, that he spoke with over the course of the week. And he would go up to them and start speaking with them. Point being is, you saw what you saw the film of, you saw the practices, you saw him dominating the practices. He comes across as a great personality, as a guy who's really got. He transferred from Cal, so getting to Cal, he's got to be kind of smart, and he shows those smarts. Just a real interesting, very likable guy, and hands down, this was my big winner from the Senior Bowl. And here's a guy who, season starts, people are looking at him as a 6th-round pick. Season goes on, he's playing much better. You're thinking maybe, late day 2. I think probably if he puts in some good numbers at the combine, you're looking at a 2nd-round pick.
I'm with you. He outplayed the 2 big edge players, or the 3 big ones here that came to the game, and we'll touch on them now. Mike Green, who I thought had himself a really good week, left after 2 days because he, I'm sure his agent was like, nope, you blew up on social media, get out of here. So he got out of here. But I thought Oladejo was better than Princely Uman-Mielen, who was there from Ole Miss. And I thought Donovan Ezaraku had a good week too, but I thought the UCLA player was better than he was over the couple days.
Every time he, lined up for a one-on-one, you turned your head because you wonder, you wanted to see what was going to happen next. You knew he was going to win. Was it going to be an outside rush? Was it going to be an inside move? Did they line him up on the inside?
Or even a bull rush, Tony. He was so strong at 260. He was manhandling bigger guys.
And it was consistent. It was consistent. Yeah. Some of these guys, as we've seen in the past, they have one good day of practice. This guy was good every single day.
And he was a talker too, by the way. When he beat you, he let you know about it. Like he was definitely one of the guys that was having fun out there. All right, I'm going to throw David Walker out there, Tony, because I got to be honest with you. I had no idea who David Walker is before I walked into Mobile. I don't feel bad about that. He's from Central Arkansas. He's also just really weirdly shaped. All right, he's just over 6 feet tall, 6 foot half inch, only 267 pounds, with 31 3/4 inch arms. He's kind of stumpy. Like, he's short, he's squat, he's kind of thick, but they couldn't block him.
Nope.
Whether he was on the edge or when he moved into 3 technique, this guy was unblockable, and guys just didn't seem to know what to do with him.
Very explosive, plays with great head level, got leverage on opponents, showed a variety of moves. I think those measurables are going to keep him out of day 2. But what you're looking at now, based off of his workout, but based off of his Senior Bowl performance, and like Oladejo, he was good every single day. It wasn't like he was good on Tuesday, and he was good every single day. In fact, I texted people who had left Mobile on Thursday. I was like, Walker is blowing it up. But with those measurables, what you're looking at right now is a day 3 selection who's going to be a pass rush specialist, special teamer on Sunday at the next level. But there's no doubt about it. You go from Central Arkansas, a Division II school, with those measurables, and then you can't be stopped every single day. Absolutely came out of the Senior Bowl as a winner.
All right, who else on the edge drew your attention?
Well, we talked about Mike Green. No reason to go any further than that. Very explosive, incredibly athletic. Forget about the play with Connolly. I still think he's got to get a little bit bigger and stronger so he can hold up against the run. I thought Josiah Stewart of Michigan also had a couple of nice days of practice. He is what he is. He's got those funky measurables like David Walker. He's a little bit taller than Walker, but he's very explosive, incredibly quick. And again, not just an edge rusher, was able to beat guys to the inside and show a variety of moves. And that's very important. You got to show that you're not just a one-trick pony.
And I'm going to throw 2 other guys out there. Landon Jackson, the big kid out of Arkansas. Again, you're looking for a bigger, not just pass rushing edge rusher. 6'5 and a half, 273, 33 and a half inch arms. Really big kid, right? Quiet the first 2 days. Day 3, he was really good. And then he had strip sack in the game. He had another pressure in the game. I thought he came on late in the week.
He's a guy who, I don't want to say he's an overachiever, but he plays better than you expect. And he's not just a pass rusher. As you mentioned, he's a bigger guy. You watch the film, he gives effort against the run, and he does a nice job shutting down the run.
Last guy I want to bring up, Tony, is Savion Jones, who I got to be honest with you, like the practices during the week, he's not somebody that I was like, oh, wow, Savion Jones, no one can block him. 6'5", 290, 33 and a half inch arms. In the game, they line him up over the guard. He beat Dre Zabel like 3 times in a row. And you mentioned Zabel was great all week. They put Jones at defensive tackle at that three technique in the game on Saturday. He was in the backfield that whole game. So that was an interesting watch for me.
Well, maybe they found the spot at the next level because, he was a guy who, when I watched the film, when I watched the games during the season, LSU, I would wait for him to make plays, wait for him to make plays, and he never really did make plays, just like you mentioned during a practice. So, that's the one thing about the Senior Bowl. You mentioned Gray Zabel, college tackle, moved him inside the guard, used him at center. Caleb Rogers of Texas Tech, college tackle, move them inside the guard. That's the beauty of the Senior Bowl is they move these guys around. They see if they got versatility to be used at different positions. Maybe Savion Jones found his Sunday spot.
Yeah, no question about it. All right, let's jump over to the linebacker position, Tony. Who are the three guys that jumped out at you?
Justin Barron of Syracuse was the only linebacker who showed well in coverage drills. He was the only guy, whether it was running backs, whether it was tight ends, would be able to stay on the pass catcher's hip and make plays on the ball. That's what he is on film. He's an athletic guy. He's fast, slightly undersized, but I love the athleticism and I love the ability to make plays by Barron when the ball was in the air. The only linebacker who, in 3 days of Senior Bowl practice on either team, was able to do it on a consistent basis. I thought Jeffrey Bassa, I like him a lot. Tough, hardworking guy, very athletic, leads by example, was going sideline to sideline making plays. I thought he had a couple nice days of practice. And Schmeelk Munden of Georgia, again, smaller guy, but goes sideline to sideline and makes as many plays with his head and instincts as he does with his sheer physical talent.
Yeah, I'll throw two guys out there. Jack Kaiser from Notre Dame. He was a late ad. I thought he was all over the field. He had an interception in practice. He had a couple pass breakups. I thought he played particularly well. I had a chance to talk to him. Really smart guy. And then Demetrius Knight, I thought was another player that's just kind of all over the place. Yep. Like he's sideline to sideline. He hits.
Carolina.
Very, very active.
Yeah, very, very plays with a nasty, almost violent sort of temperament to his game. Likes the physical contact. Was making a lot of plays in pursuit and out to the flanks when you watch them.
All right, defensive backs, Tony. I didn't think this was one of the groups that was really jumped out at me at least. But who did you like at that cornerback spot? I know you mentioned one of them off the top.
Yeah, Azarai Thomas of Florida State. Here's a guy, when I watched him on film, he was up and down, but I thought he had 3 really good days of practice. He's a bigger cornerback. He's a physical cornerback. What really impressed me about him was his ability to get his head back around and track the pass in the air rather than face guard. I was very impressed with him. I remember, I sent you the email about guys to watch, and I really didn't see it in him on film. Absolutely saw it during Senior Bowl practice. I thought he was terrific.
But I was going to say this, Tony. Don't put him on Tez Johnson anymore. That is not a good matchup for him. He got lined up on Tez Johnson way too many times.
Dorian Strong of Virginia Tech had 2 really good days of practice before he left. I think he had a hamstring issue. Brandon Adams of Central Florida, another bigger cornerback who showed flashes, wasn't consistent. I didn't think overall the defensive backs on either side were a good group, but Brandon Adams did show a lot of ability. And I thought Jonas Sanker, the safety from Virginia, played very, very well. Came into the season graded as a low level of free agent. I thought he played well last year for Virginia, and I thought he made a lot of plays in coverage because he's a safety. And what you want to see with these safeties are how do they do in coverage? How do they do in the one-on-ones? How do they do in scrimmage? And I thought Sanker made a lot of nice plays in coverage, both in full scrimmage, the team drills, as well as the one-on-ones.
Yeah, 2 other safeties. I thought Dante Trader had some moments over the course of the week. And I thought Dan Jackson out of Georgia, kind of a big hitter. I thought he had a big hit in the game to separate a receiver from the ball. He also had a big hit on Jack Besh in a red zone drill to separate him from a ball over the course of practice. Then at corner, I thought Quincy Riley and Darian Porter, both on the national team, I thought they had decent days in coverage. Both guys want to play man-to-man. Porter's a bigger guy, 6'2", 197. And then I thought Max Hairston out of Kentucky was also pretty good, the cornerback. Again, kind of a longer, lighter guy that wants to play press outside. Those are the corners that kind of jumped out at me.
Yeah, Hairston, I would agree with you. Hairston, like Porter, were up and down. There was no sheer consistency. There was no Oladejus in the secondary group from either team, that guys that just dominated day after day after day. Most of these guys had their moments, but they also got beat at times.
All right, so Tony and I have kind of our schedule set up now between now and the combine. I believe the order, Tony, we're going to do your top 10 at different positions next week, right? Then we're going to have a
Yep.
mock draft, and then we're going to do our combine preview, correct? Tell the folks what you have coming out.
Well, we'll have updated rankings at Sportskeeda, especially with the mock draft simulator. You like that mock draft simulator? It's now starting to be populated with scouting reports. So if you go there, the end of this week being February 9th or so before the Super Bowl, the mock draft simulator will be updated with updated rankings, which will also be able to be found, as well as scouting reports. Don't have the big conferences yet; just have the one AA guys and the Conference USA, Sun Belt, AAC, those sorts of conferences. But we're starting to move into where we will have 400 plus scouting reports in the mock draft simulator, which is always fun to play. Be careful; it's addictive.
Yeah, yes, it is. And then Tony will have a mock draft coming out next couple of weeks. We'll talk about that on the show. We'll do our updated top 10 rankings at each position, or Tony will have his, and then I get to pick them apart a little bit, which is always fun. And then we have our combine preview, and then we're off to the combine. So make sure you check all that out on draft season over the course of the next few weeks. For Tony Pauline from Sportskeeda, I'm John Schmeelk. That's draft season, brought to you by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Giants. We'll see you next time, everybody.